Hello and welcome to Zen Jo Tangling Tips and Techniques. My name's Jo and today I wanted to talk to you about the tangle called Paradox. Paradox is a fabulous tangle that is basically straight lines and creates something rather lovely. Okay, so I'm going to pop that to one side. And before I start tangling, do you know, even if I'm doing these, I just take a moment to stop and think what I'm grateful for. That first basic step of the Zen Tangle method. Today, it's a really grey day, bit rainy when we've had a sunny week, and it could be really dismal, but I'm sort of really grateful that I've been able to get on and do some tidying up and all that sort of thing. And now I can do this, so that's quite nice. Okay. So with my pencil, I am going to do the classic dots, 4 corner dots with my pencil, just lightly and quickly. And then just with a light stroke, I'm going to join those dots to a border. Okay. And initially, I'm just going to divide it into quarters, and then this side I'm going to divide those into nice little squares on that side, and this side I'm going to do with triangles or diagonal crosses. Okay, and this is just so that I can show you what happens when we do paradox, and I'm hoping you can see. Made that a bit too big. Hoping you see the little squares. So paradox, really easy, but it looks very complicated. So I'm going to use a micron pen in black. So I'm going to start off in this top little square, and we only work in one little square at a time. I don't have to think about anything else that I'm going to do on the tile here. So I'm going to start resting my hand nice and comfortably. I'm going to start by defining that outer line to begin with. Okay, so I've got a nice little box to work in. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pen from here up to the line, and I'm going to just bring it out slightly. And as I do this, I'll take it up and I'll hold it there. What I can do now is I can turn my tile. I'm pushing it around with my finger, and from that point I'm going to go point to the line and just take it out very carefully. Okay, and from there I want to then turn my tile, and I'm going from point to the line, just taking out nice and steady, and we're just going to continue that single stroke with a straight line, point to line, and every time you take that stroke, that pen stroke, you just move it out very slightly. You start at the same point, the point you finished on, turn your tile, and you keep adding these straight lines one at a time, just using your focus. And really important to turn your tile just so that your arm and your hand that you're drawing with stays in the same position. Sometimes it's easier to hold your tile with your fingers, okay, and turn it so that you've using one hand to turn, and you can leave your drawing arm in the same position. That means that it's always comfortable. You don't have to worry about picking a pen up, moving your arm, putting a pen back down again. It's making it as easy as you can for yourself so that you reduce that stress and pressure. So all I'm doing is turning. My arm is resting on my desk here, which I'm pleased to tell you I tidied up today. Anybody who does craft work, drawing, and any tangler will know that it's very easy to end up with bits of paper, tiles, cards, pens. Okay, so as I get into making this a lot smaller, I can then very easily do those little lines, point to line, coming out. Okay, so you can see I've drawn, you've seen me do this, I've drawn straight lines, and the paradox is that you end up with this sort of lovely swirl, this curve, okay? So that's my first one, and I'm going to do it again. So I'm just going to redefine that box. Okay, and I'm going to, you notice I'm right-handed, and for me it is, oops, going off the screen here, the easiest thing for me to do is to start over on the left and bring it out towards the right-hand side. So I'm starting down at this point, just like I did on this one. So I'm starting down at the point. I'm going to take my pen out a little way. Okay, I'll lift that tile, turn it round, and I can hold it. It's still on the table. It's still on my cork board. I was asked about my cork board the other day. I have several of them. They're called placemats. I just bought some cheap placemats that have like a formica on one side and a cork on the other side, and I find them really handy. I like the cork because it's absorbent, it's a little bit springy, it holds the tile, stays secure, but it also allows for you to move it. It sort of does the both really, so that you can easily rotate your tile. And as you can see, I'm just steadily adding these lines one at a time, and we're going to create yet another box full of paradox. So paradox, you can put it in any straight-sided reticular. A reticular is like a container, so a grid, or and I've started off this one by showing you with a square grid formation. Okay, so there are my first two paradox, and I did both of them starting from the left hand side, and what happens is you get this lovely meta pattern, you get this swirl that comes in the middle by doing it this way. Okay, so I'm going to start again, do another one, another paradox here, just redefine this, and I'm going to, as you can see, I can do this without having to turn my tile, but I would recommend when you first start that you do turn your tile so that you know where you're going. Another tip, if you're doing this and something interrupts you, telephone rings, somebody comes to the door, I would suggest you do a line and stop there, because otherwise when you come back you will find that sometimes it's a little difficult to work out where you start the next line. So if you do get interrupted, stop midline and then you can carry on when you come back to it. It's just a little side tip there. Okay, so I've done this one exactly the same. So I started on the right, and you can see there you've got that swirl meta pattern that we had in the top as well. Okay, now with this one now, I'm going to start on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to start on this side, and at first it can feel a bit strange when you're used to doing things from the other direction. But as you can see, it's always from the point, take it out to the line, point out to the line. There we are. Just nice and steady. Okay, so that's paradox drawn firstly left to right and now right to left. And what happens when you do it this way is you end up with a different meta pattern. You can see I can make that small. And the meta pattern you get this time by doing them opposite directions is you get this lovely sort of, I think it looks like a shield shape. So this is with squares that you get this pattern. So it's up to you which way you decide to do them. You don't really have to think about it. It's not necessary to create that pattern, but it's just nice to know that you can do that. You can do paradox in triangles. So here I'm going to start, now this is quite a long line to do, so out from the point out to the line, I can bring this down here. Okay, and as you can see it's a straight-sided triangle, and you can still add a paradox in here. Okay, and you can do the same in this one. Taking your time. So again, from the point, take it up. From the point, this one is going to come all the way this way, down to the line. From the point, out to the line. There's something really restful about just adding straight lines and creating something that looks amazing. The closer you have these lines, the more intense the visual will be. If you have them spaced out, you don't get this sort of curve as being so sort of accentuated. So this is sort of a basic paradox. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of a twist, and I'm going to do something that's a little bit different, and I'm going to do a weighted paradox. Okay, weighted paradox I absolutely love, and I admit I do it more often than I do the straight paradox, and I do it slightly differently. Now with this one I said point to line. Let's start down here. So I'm going to redefine this box here. You don't have to redefine the box, but I just like it because it gives me a little bit more space to work in, or it gives me a defined space to work in. This time with weighted paradox, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the line and bring it down to the point. And in fact, I'm just going to put a very slight, there's a very, very slight curve on that. So once I've got my line, I'm going to add some weight just at the top. Just like that. Okay, turn my tile. I'm now going to start from the top, bring it down to the point, and I'm going to add some weight. So basically it's the same process, just a little bit turned round. So instead of going from the point up to the wide line, I start at the top, the wider point, and bring it down to the little point, and each line I just add a little bit of weight on the end. Weighted lines are fantastic. I love them for filling spaces, and when I sort of had a little play with doing it with paradox, I was absolutely, I'm going to use an English word, and I know I've had a laugh with some of my American students with some of the words I use, because yeah, it just sounds funny. If I say, oh, I was chuffed to bits, and people go, what do you mean chuffed to bits? Well, it means that you're really happy, that you're really pleased with what you've done. And you can see by adding these lines, it's still paradox, but by accentuating and adding some thicker weight at the end of the line, you get a really strong image there. Okay, just blow that little bit of, I think it's a little bit of pencil actually, out of the way. And so with the weighted paradox, yeah, it might take a little bit longer. Yeah, I can do this one come along that way. Can you see how it's really a strong pattern in comparison with the normal paradox? And as it gets smaller, I just add a little, it's like a little triangle just on the end, So there I've got weighted paradox, and I can do the same as I did with the other ones and bring this one down here. I can add a little bit of weight on that bit as well if I want. Okay, so with paradox you don't have to stick to having like formal grids. You can do a really random grid, you know, with diagonals and horizontals and verticals, and so that you've got some really sort of, you've got straight-sided reticular. Oops, move the weighted paradox label out of the way. You've got straight-sided reticular, as in areas in which to fill your with paradox, but they might have, you might have triangular, you might have rectangular, you might have square, you might have pentagons, you know, 5-sided, 6-sided, goodness knows, small, large. And what happens then, and I'm going to show you some completed ones in a moment. I just wanted you to see what a little section looks like with this weighted paradox. And it's worth just having a little play. It is a fantastic monotangle because you get really in the zone. You're drawing a straight line, you're adding a little bit of weight on the end. Repeat, straight line, little bit of weight on the end, and repeat. And that's what gives us our zen. That's what gives us that quiet mind moment. It's shown that the proactive mindfulness that's created by creating Zentangle comes from this repetitive line drawing, and that's why monotangles are so fab. So wonderful. So there you go. That is weighted paradox. Okay. So there we go. So you've got plain paradox and weighted paradox. Let me show you a few examples of weighted paradox, and I will find them. Okay. So here are some examples of that weighted paradox. In a random grid, this is on an ATC tile, and you can see how dramatic it looks. Here's another one, and this was a random grid. I used a 01 pen with this, and the shading is really easy. Really easy. You just add some shading on the curves, and this will give you this wonderful sort of barley twist appearance of your weighted paradox. On this one, I used it on a 3Z. I used a pink pen, pink micron, which is a bit girly, and I used a little bit of graphite for shading and a little bit of pink pencil. That was all. So that was quite a fun one to do. And this one here, that same principle as this one, but I used a mix of green and blue pens, and I'd popped a little gem in the middle as well. So weighted paradox is a whole lot of fun, something that I use a lot, and I would urge you just have a little play with it and really enjoy making a monotangle that you can sort of have some fun with. So there we go, paradox and weighted paradox. Bye.